When I was born, my entire life became a shadow to my brother's spotlight. I'm Jade, 28, a self-made tech executive. My brother Ethan, 33, has always been the favored one, the golden child, the one who could do no wrong in my mother's eyes. From the time we were kids, Ethan walked on a path paved with our mom's unwavering support. Football games, graduation parties, job interviews, she was always there, front row, clapping the loudest. Meanwhile, I was the forgotten daughter, the afterthought. The one whose achievements, no matter how significant, were always met with a polite but distant, "That's nice, dear." Our dad left when I was just 4 and Ethan was 9. My mom, perhaps in her grief, decided that Ethan was the one who needed her the most. He became the man of the house in her eyes while I was left to navigate childhood largely on my own. Ethan made the football team in high school. The whole family celebrated. I won second place in a state science competition. "That's nice, honey. Did you hear about Ethan's big game?" As we grew older, the gap only widened. Ethan went to college. My mom helped pay for it despite his average grades. She took out loans, cut back on her own expenses, and worked overtime to make sure Ethan had everything he needed. Me, I had to take out my own loans, work 2 jobs, and graduate with honors just to keep up. I remember the day I walked across that stage to collect my degree, my heart swelling with pride, hoping for even a sliver of the support Ethan had always gotten. But on that same day, my mom missed my graduation to drive Ethan to a job interview. "He needs my support, honey. You'll understand someday," she said over the phone, her voice thick with pride. I hung up the diploma in my hand, feeling strangely weightless. For years, I watched this pattern play out. Ethan would get a mediocre job and my mom would throw a party. I'd land a high-paying promotion and she'd send a brief, "Proud of you" text. It wasn't just favoritism, it felt like an erasure. A deliberate refusal to see me, to acknowledge that I had become someone significant, someone who had worked for every inch of her success. By my early 20s, I was working as a software engineer at a promising startup. The pay wasn't great at first, but I received stock options as part of my compensation. I lived frugally, sharing a tiny apartment with 3 roommates, eating ramen for dinner and skipping nights out to save every penny. Ethan, meanwhile, bounced from job to job, his resume a patchwork of short stints in real estate, insurance, and marketing. But none of that seemed to matter. To my mom, Ethan was the success story, the man who was always on the verge of greatness. I stopped sharing my accomplishments with my family. It was easier to just smile, nod, and let them believe I was still struggling. It became a kind of survival mechanism, a way to protect myself from the constant disappointment. Then a few years ago, my startup began to take off. We secured a major funding round, our user base exploded, and the stock options I'd been quietly holding on to started to multiply in value. I paid off my student loans, built a solid investment portfolio, and began to imagine a future free from the financial stress that had defined my early adulthood. I had always been good with numbers, with logic, with strategy, skills my family never seemed to value, but those skills were finally paying off. While Ethan and my mom continued their small, insular world of family cookouts and Sunday dinners, I was building something real, something that couldn't be taken away or overshadowed. Then came the summer barbecue. I almost didn't go. Family gatherings had become a chore, a gauntlet of thinly veiled comparisons and subtle put-downs. But my cousin Nora, the only family member who had ever truly seen me, begged me to come. "Please, Jade," she texted. "If I have to listen to Aunt Debbie ask me why I'm not married one more time, I might actually lose it." So I went. When I arrived, I was greeted by a scene that could have been ripped from a sitcom about overbearing families. Balloons floated on the breeze, a massive banner reading, "Congratulations, Ethan," hung across the back deck, and the grill sizzled with overcooked burgers. Ethan held court near the grill, his girlfriend Vanessa clinging to his arm, both of them beaming like minor royalty. My mom was practically glowing, her voice rising above the chatter as she bragged to anyone who would listen about Ethan's latest big news. I grabbed a soda from the cooler and made my way to the corner of the yard where Nora was hiding. She rolled her eyes as I approached. "Kill me now," she whispered. "I swear if one more relative asks me if I've tried online dating, I'm diving into the pool." I forced a smile, but my heart wasn't in it. I scanned the yard, taking in the carefully staged scene, the clinking of glasses, the murmurs of "I'm so proud of him," and felt the old familiar anger start to bubble up. Finally, my mom clinked her glass to get everyone's attention. The yard fell quiet. "Everyone, I have some exciting news," she announced, her eyes shining. "Ethan has been pre-approved for a mortgage. He's buying his first house." The crowd erupted into cheers. My Aunt Debbie actually had tears in her eyes. I felt the soda can in my hand crumple slightly under my grip. It was happening again. Ethan, the perpetual child, the man who had never held a job for more than a year, was being celebrated like he had just solved world hunger, while my own achievements, my quiet victories, continued to go unnoticed. But this time I wouldn't stay silent. This time I was ready. As the cheers died down, my mom continued her speech, proudly detailing every corner of Ethan's future home. "It's in Oakwood Heights," she gushed. "4 bedrooms, a finished basement, a beautiful backyard. He's really doing so well for himself." I watched as Ethan soaked in the admiration, his chest puffed out like a peacock. I felt that familiar twist in my stomach, the same one I'd felt at every graduation, every family dinner, every moment my accomplishments had been quietly pushed aside. I glanced at Nora, who gave me a sympathetic half-smile and a quick eye roll. She understood. She always had. But this time it felt different. This time I wasn't just the forgotten daughter. I was the one holding a secret so significant that it could shatter the illusion my family had carefully crafted around Ethan's supposed success. As the barbecue wound down and the sun dipped behind the trees, I found myself wandering into the kitchen to refill my drink. That's when I overheard them. My mom and Ethan standing just around the corner. "The down payment's going to be tight," Ethan was saying, his voice lowered but still audible over the clatter of dishes. "I might need to borrow a bit more than we discussed." "Ethan, I already gave you $15,000, my mom replied, her voice strained. "That's almost all I had saved." I know, he said, a hint of frustration creeping into his tone. "But Vanessa really loves this place. It's perfect. We just need a bit more to cover the closing costs. Maybe another $5,000. My fingers tightened around my glass, the cold condensation slick against my skin. I felt a rush of anger so fierce it nearly made me lightheaded. $15,000. That was practically my mom's entire retirement fund. I had never asked her for a cent. Not for my college tuition, not for my first apartment, not even when I was scraping by on ramen and coffee, working 2 jobs and coding late into the night just to keep my head above water. And yet here she was bailing Ethan out once again, sacrificing her financial stability to fund his latest life experiment. I slipped quietly out the back door, my heart pounding. I felt the cool evening air hit my face, the sounds of clinking glasses and cheerful laughter drifting through the open kitchen window behind me. I took a deep breath, letting the crisp air fill my lungs, trying to steady myself. That night as I drove home, I couldn't shake the conversation I'd overheard. The thought of my mom sacrificing her hard-earned savings for Ethan's overpriced suburban dream house made my stomach churn. It wasn't just the money, it was the principle. The way she had always chosen Ethan over me without a second thought, without a moment's hesitation. When I finally reached my downtown apartment, I sat in the car for a long time, the engine ticking softly as it cooled. I stared up at my building, at the row of narrow, slightly grimy windows, the flickering streetlight casting shadows on the brick facade. I thought about the life I had built for myself, the countless sacrifices, the nights spent hunched over my laptop, the stress of startup life, the quiet pride I felt when my company went public, turning my stock options into a small fortune. I had paid off my student loans, built a solid investment portfolio, and had enough savings to live comfortably for years, if not decades. And yet none of that had ever seemed to matter to my family. To them, I was still just the kid sister, the quiet one, the one who never quite measured up to their beloved Ethan. I made a decision that night. I wouldn't stay silent anymore. I wouldn't let my family's blind worship of Ethan continue to define my worth. I was done hiding, done pretending, done waiting for recognition that would never come. Over the next few weeks, I started laying the groundwork for my quiet rebellion. I called my real estate agent, a sharp, no-nonsense woman I had met through a colleague, and asked her to start sending me listings for homes outside the city. I knew exactly what I wanted. Something spacious, private, with plenty of room to grow. It didn't take long for her to find the perfect place, a 200-square-foot property on 3 acres just outside the city, with floor-to-ceiling windows, a wraparound deck, and a small bubbling creek running through the backyard. It had been listed privately, the owner eager to sell quickly to avoid the hassle of a public listing. I toured the house on a rainy Tuesday morning, the air thick with the smell of wet pine and fresh earth. I wandered through the empty rooms, my footsteps echoing off the polished hardwood floors. I ran my fingers along the cool marble countertops, stood in the master bedroom, and watched the rain trickle down the floor-to-ceiling windows, blurring the view of the dense woods beyond. It felt right. It felt like mine. I made an offer that afternoon. Cash, no mortgage, no cosigner, just me and the fruits of my labor, the years of sacrifice finally paying off. 2 weeks later, I was holding the keys to my new home. I moved in quietly without fanfare, without a word to my family. The only person I told was Nora, who nearly cried when she saw the place. "Jade, this is incredible," she whispered, spinning slowly in the open sunlit kitchen. "You did this. You really did this." I felt a warmth spread through my chest, a quiet, satisfying sense of pride that I had long since given up hoping for from my family. I had built something real, something tangible, something that no one could take away from me. And for the first time in my life, I didn't care if my mom or Ethan ever knew. Thanksgiving was approaching, and as the days grew shorter and the air turned crisp, I felt a strange simmering energy building inside me. I had always dreaded these family gatherings, the forced smiles, the awkward small talk, the subtle but constant comparisons to Ethan. But this year felt different. I had my own secret now, a beautiful, sprawling home that I had paid for in cash, a life that I had built with my own 2 hands. I had accomplished everything my family had assumed I never would, and I had done it without their help, without their validation. Still, part of me hesitated. It would be so easy to just skip the whole thing, to stay home in my beautiful house, curled up on the couch with my dog Oscar, watching the leaves fall outside my floor-to-ceiling windows. But something in me wanted to go. Maybe it was the lingering hurt, the old festering wound of being constantly overlooked, constantly underestimated. Maybe I just wanted to see their faces when they realized how wrong they had been. So I went. I arrived at Ethan's new house, a standard cookie-cutter suburban build with beige siding and a neatly manicured lawn, and parked my car at the end of the long line of vehicles already crowding the driveway. I grabbed the bottle of wine I had brought, a nice one I'd picked up during a trip to Napa a few months earlier, and made my way up the front steps. Vanessa opened the door, her face lighting up in a bright, somewhat forced smile. "Jade, so glad you could make it," she said, pulling me into a quick, perfunctory hug. I returned the gesture, trying not to flinch as her strong perfume filled my nose. Inside the house was buzzing with the familiar chaos of a large family gathering, kids screaming, aunts and uncles laughing too loudly, the clatter of dishes from the kitchen. Ethan was playing the part of the proud homeowner, guiding various relatives on a grand tour of his new domain. "And here's the kitchen," I heard him say as I slipped off my shoes and placed the wine bottle on the crowded dining room table. Vanessa picked out all the finishes herself. I felt a small, bitter smile tug at the corner of my mouth. I had a kitchen too, one with custom cabinets, high-end appliances, and a massive island that could fit half the people in this house around it. But I doubted Ethan would ever know that. I found Nora in the living room, hovering near the fireplace, her expression a mix of amusement and exasperation. She spotted me and immediately made her way over, pulling me into a tight hug. "You came," she whispered, her tone genuinely relieved. "I wasn't sure you would." "I almost didn't," I replied, squeezing her back. "But I figured you could use some moral support." She pulled back her eyes, flicking toward Ethan, who was now loudly recounting the saga of his mortgage pre-approval to a small group of captivated aunts. "Trust me, I need it," she muttered. "They've been talking about his damn house all day." I followed her gaze, watching as my mom drifted over to Ethan, her face glowing with pride as she clasped his arm and leaned in to whisper something in his ear. He grinned, his chest puffing out even further, his eyes sweeping the room as if he were a king surveying his kingdom. As the afternoon wore on, I made my way around the house, dodging nosy questions from various relatives about my relationship status, my career, my supposedly humble apartment. I gave the usual vague answers, careful not to reveal too much, not yet. Finally, we all sat down to eat the long, polished dining table, groaning under the weight of a dozen platters of steaming, fragrant dishes. Ethan took his place at the head of the table, Vanessa on one side, my mom on the other. I ended up squeezed between Nora and Aunt Debbie, who immediately launched into an interrogation about my personal life. "So Jade," she said, leaning in conspiratorially as she passed me the mashed potatoes, "any special someone in your life yet? You're not getting any younger, you know." I forced a tight smile, my fingers gripping the edge of my plate a little too tightly. "No, not at the moment," I replied carefully, keeping my tone neutral. "I'm focusing on my career right now." My mom, who had been eavesdropping from her place of honor beside Ethan, leaned in with a sympathetic smile. "Jade's always been so independent," she said, her voice tinged with the same faint disappointment I had grown so used to. "Not everyone is ready to settle down and build a life like Ethan and Vanessa." I felt my jaw clench, a sharp, bitter retort rising to my lips, but I forced myself to swallow it down. Not yet. The meal dragged on. Ethan, regaling the table with stories about his new neighborhood, the various home improvement projects he had planned, the long list of upgrades he and Vanessa were already planning to make. I tuned most of it out, focusing instead on my plate, the clink of silverware, the warm, comforting glow of the candles flickering along the center of the table. Finally, as the plates were being cleared and the last of the wine was being poured, my mom leaned over, her eyes fixed firmly on me. "Jade, honey," she said, her tone carefully casual, "when are you going to finally settle down? Don't you want what your brother has? A beautiful home, a stable life, a family to come home to." The table fell silent. I felt every set of eyes around me turn in my direction, the weight of their expectations pressing down like a physical force. I took a slow sip of my wine, letting the silence stretch just long enough to make them uncomfortable, then set my glass down carefully. "Oh, I already did," I said, meeting my mother's eyes across the table. "I just didn't invite anyone who doubts me." The silence that followed was absolute. I watched as my mom's face paled, her fork clattering to her plate. Ethan's smug smile froze in place, his eyes flicking nervously between me and my mother. It had begun. The silence stretched on every eye at the table, fixed on me. The clatter of forks and glasses suddenly stilled. I felt my pulse slow, my breathing steady, the quiet power of years of overlooked success finally finding its voice. Ethan's smile twitched at the corners, his eyes narrowing slightly as he tried to recover. "You already settled down?" he asked, his tone a mix of disbelief and poorly masked irritation. "What are you talking about, Jade?" I took another slow sip of my wine, letting the rich dark liquid wash away the bitter taste of all the times I had swallowed my pride, all the moments I had stayed silent, all the years I had allowed my family to overlook me. "I bought a house," I said, my voice calm, steady, each word deliberate. "About 8 months ago, paid in full, no mortgage." My mom's eyes went wide, her face draining of color. You bought a house?" she stammered, her fork clattering against her plate. "You never said anything." "You never asked," I replied, my gaze steady, my heart beating a slow, powerful rhythm in my chest. Every time I tried to share something, the conversation always turned back to Ethan. I stopped trying. I watched as the realization sank in, the slow dawning understanding that they had missed something monumental, something that should have been impossible to ignore. Ethan leaned back in his chair, his jaw clenched so tightly I could almost hear his teeth grinding. "What kind of place are we talking about here?" he asked, his voice carefully casual, but his eyes sharp predatory. "A condo downtown or something?" I met his gaze, feeling a strange, almost electric calm wash over me. "No," I said, setting my wine glass down and folding my hands in my lap. "It's a house, just over 200 square feet, 3 acres. It has a stream running through the back, a wraparound deck, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the woods." The room fell even quieter. The only sound, the soft crackling of the candles flickering on the table. Ethan's face went a shade paler, his hand tightening around his wine glass. I saw my mom glance sharply at him, her eyes wide, her mouth opening and closing like a fish pulled from the water. "You bought a 200 square foot house?" My Aunt Debbie finally managed to squeak out, her eyes nearly as wide as my mother's. "Yes," I said, letting the word hang in the air for a moment, savoring the stunned silence that followed. "And I paid cash for it. No mortgage, no cosigner, just me." I saw Ethan's hand tremble slightly as he set his wine glass down, a faint ring of deep red liquid clinging to the rim. His jaw worked, his eyes darting between me, my mom, and the other stunned faces around the table. Finally, he forced a brittle, too loud laugh, the sound echoing sharply in the heavy silence. "Come on, Jade," he said, trying to recover his tone dripping with forced nonchalance. That's a bit much, don't you think? A house that size for just one person." I felt my lips curve into a small, satisfied smile, the kind that had always seemed to elude me in these moments, the kind that came naturally to Ethan, but had always felt just out of reach for me. "Not really," I said, my tone light, almost casual. "I mean, it's not like I have to worry about making mortgage payments or anything." Ethan's face darkened, his eyes narrowing, the faint ghostly pallor of his skin turning a deeper, angrier shade of red. I could almost see the gears turning in his mind, the calculations, the slow, painful realization that his carefully constructed image of superiority was crumbling before his eyes. "You paid cash," he repeated, his voice flat, his hand tightening around his fork. "For a house that size?" "Yes," I said, simply holding his gaze without flinching. I didn't see the point in taking on debt when I didn't have to. The silence that followed was suffocating, the air around the table thick with shocked disbelief and a slowly building undercurrent of resentment. I felt the weight of my mother's stare, her wide, uncomprehending eyes locked on my face, her hand trembling slightly as it hovered over her half-empty glass of white wine. But how? She finally managed to whisper, her voice trembling with a mixture of confusion and something that might have been fear. How could you afford that? I met her gaze, feeling a sudden sharp rush of something like triumph, the long-buried satisfaction of finally being seen, finally being heard, finally being recognized for what I had accomplished. I worked, I said, my voice low, steady, every word a carefully measured strike. I saved, I invested, I got promoted 5 times in 6 years. I became the CTO of my company. My stock options were worth a small fortune when the company got acquired last year. I've been living below my means for years, saving every penny, investing wisely, building a life that makes me happy. I watched as my mother's face crumpled slightly, the carefully constructed mask of proud, doting motherhood, slipping the faint lines around her mouth, deepening, her eyes growing wet. You never said, she whispered, her voice small, almost childlike, the words trembling in the air between us. You never asked? I replied, my tone sharper than I had intended, the years of pent-up frustration bleeding into my voice, my heart pounding in my chest like a war drum. You never cared enough to ask. For the first time in my life, I watched as my family truly, deeply, completely saw me. Not the quiet, overlooked daughter, not the perpetual underachiever, not the afterthought, but the woman who had quietly, methodically built a life for herself, a life that no one had expected, a life that no one could take away. And for the first time, I felt free. The rest of that Thanksgiving dinner passed in a blur, the clinking of glasses and the clatter of silverware, a distant echo, the murmurs and forced laughter around the table, somehow muted, as if the entire room had been wrapped in a thick, suffocating fog. I felt every glance, every stolen look, every whispered conversation that crackled through the room like static. Ethan avoided my eyes, his face a tight mask of barely controlled anger, his jaw clenched so tightly I thought his teeth might crack. My mom's hands trembled as she picked at the remains of her meal, her eyes glassy, unfocused, her mind clearly racing through 1,000 unspoken questions. I took no pleasure in their discomfort. I felt no surge of vindication, no rush of long-awaited triumph. I only felt a deep, bone-weary exhaustion, the slow, aching release of years of pent-up frustration, the slow unraveling of a knot I hadn't even realized I had been carrying in my chest. As the meal wound down and the guests began to drift toward the living room for dessert and coffee, I slipped quietly out to the back deck, the cool night air sharp and bracing against my flushed skin. I closed my eyes, leaning against the wooden railing, the distant sound of laughter and clinking dishes drifting through the open sliding door behind me. For a long moment, I just breathed the crisp autumn air filling my lungs, the distant rustle of leaves and the soft chirp of crickets, the only sounds in the still moonlit darkness. I felt the tension slowly drain from my body, the tightness in my chest easing, the sharp, bitter taste of old wounds and unspoken words slowly dissolving. I had almost convinced myself to leave, to slip quietly out the back gate and drive home to my beautiful empty house, to my quiet, peaceful life, when I heard the sliding door creak open behind me. Jade. I opened my eyes, my hands tightening around the cool, rough wood of the railing, the faint scent of her perfume already telling me who it was. I turned slowly, meeting my mother's wide, uncertain eyes, her face pale and drawn in the dim glow of the porch light. She hesitated in the doorway, one hand still gripping the edge of the glass door as if afraid to step fully into the darkness to close the distance between us. I didn't know, she whispered, her voice small, almost childlike, the words trembling on the cool night air. I didn't know you had done all that. I didn't know you had succeeded. I felt a flicker of something like anger, a sharp, bitter pang of resentment that cut through the cool, detached calm I had wrapped around myself like armor. But I forced it down, forced my voice to stay steady, forced my expression to remain calm, even as my heart beat a slow, heavy rhythm in my chest. You never asked. I replied, my tone flat, matter-of-fact, the words falling from my lips with a finality that left no room for argument. You never cared enough to ask. I watched as her face crumpled slightly, the faint lines around her mouth deepening, her eyes growing wet, her hand tightening on the edge of the doorframe. I thought you were struggling, she said, her voice shaking, her eyes dropping to the wooden planks of the deck beneath our feet. I thought you were still finding your way. I felt a sharp, bitter laugh bubble up in my throat, the sound bitter, hollow, tinged with the faintest hint of disbelief. Finding my way, I repeated, shaking my head slowly, my fingers tightening around the railing until the rough wood bit into my palms. Mom, I've been supporting myself for years. I paid off my student loans. I built a career from scratch. I've been investing, saving, planning for a future that I never expected anyone to notice because you never did. She flinched at my words, her eyes flicking back up to meet mine, the faint shimmer of unshed tears reflecting the dim glow of the porch light. "But, Ethan," she whispered, her voice breaking slightly, the words tumbling from her lips in a desperate, hurried rush. "Ethan needed me. He always needed me. He's always been fragile." I felt a sharp, bitter pang of something like pity, a faint, distant echo of the sympathy I had once felt for my brother, for the boy who had grown up under the weight of our father's sudden departure, the boy who had been cast in the role of the golden child, the favored son, the one who could do no wrong. But that sympathy had long since turned to something colder, harder, sharper, a bitter, unyielding edge that cut through the last lingering threads of sibling loyalty, the last faint traces of familial love. "And I wasn't?" I asked, my voice low, my words slow and deliberate, each one a carefully aimed blow, each one cutting deeper than the last. "I wasn't fragile. I didn't need support. I didn't need someone to believe in me, to see me, to care about my future." She flinched again, her eyes dropping to the ground, her hand tightening on the doorframe, her shoulders hunching slightly, her entire body seeming to shrink in on itself, to fold inward like a house of cards collapsing under the weight of too many broken promises, too many unspoken words. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice barely audible, the words trembling on the cool night air, the faint distant sound of laughter and clinking dishes drifting through the open door behind her. "I'm so sorry, Jade. I didn't know. I should have seen you." I took a deep, slow breath, my eyes dropping to the wooden planks beneath my feet, the cool night air sharp and bracing against my flushed skin, my heart pounding a slow, steady rhythm in my chest. "It's too late," I said, my voice quiet, my tone steady, each word a carefully measured blow, each one a final, irrevocable break in the fragile, crumbling bond that had once held us together. "I've moved on. I've built a life for myself, a life that doesn't depend on your approval, a life that doesn't need your validation." I turned away, my eyes lifting to the dark, star-strewn sky, the cool, crisp night air filling my lungs, the distant rustle of leaves and the soft chirp of crickets, the only sounds in the still moonlit darkness. "I hope Ethan figures it out," I said, my voice low, my tone calm, detached, my heart finally free of the weight I had carried for so long. "But I'm done trying to prove myself to people who never bothered to see me." I walked past her, slipping quietly through the open sliding door, the warm, chaotic sounds of the crowded living room washing over me as I made my way toward the front door, my head held high, my heart finally fully at peace. I didn't look back, and for the first time I didn't feel invisible. Story 2, "I love you but she can't come," Maya said, legs crossed, sipping on something green and smug. "It's about elegance, a visual theme. I'm not trying to be mean, I'm being honest." That was how my sister chose to tell me that my wife wasn't welcome at her wedding. Not politely, not with a hint of dignity. Just a casual sip of her kale smoothie and a smile like she was doing me a favor. My wife Dana sat beside me, hands clenched so tight I saw the blood drain from her knuckles. Her jaw twitched. She didn't say a word. I knew that look, restraint pressed hard against the back of her teeth. I turned to Maya, the influencer, the family's aesthetic dictator, the woman who thought a wedding was a brand campaign with a live orchestra. "You're banning Dana." Maya tilted her head, faux innocent. "I'm refining the guest list." Then she picked up her phone and started scrolling through mood boards like we weren't even there. Dinah stood first. "Let's go." Her voice cracked, but her posture didn't. Back straight, chin up, no tears. We didn't say goodbye. Not to Maya, not to our mom who sat there silently, not to our dad who was too preoccupied with a seating chart to notice we were walking out. In the car, I held the door open. Dana paused and looked at me. "Don't make a scene," she whispered. That's when something inside me, something long dormant, fractured. I didn't argue. I just kissed her forehead and drove us home. That night, I RSVP'd I sent a gift anyway, top-tier espresso machine from her registry, no note, no drama. Then I made a phone call. Private helicopter. Vineyard venue. Scheduled for exactly when Maya planned her golden hour portraits. I didn't plan to crash the ceremony. I planned something more elegant, more permanent. But I need to rewind, because this wasn't just about a wedding. This was years in the making. Maya was always the star. I was the support beam. She had the tiaras, the pageants, the shiny school awards that came with performances and Instagram filters. I had the bills, the favors, the forgotten birthdays spent driving her to photo shoots or waiting outside dance recitals with snacks she never thanked me for. When our dad forgot to pay the power bill for 2 months, I paid it. Quietly. When Maya's car broke down before prom, I maxed out a card to fix it. College, I co-signed her lease. Her layoff, I paid her rent, her groceries, her boutique gym, and when she turned 28 and demanded a surprise birthday bash fit for an heiress, I dropped $300 for an ice sculpture and artisanal cupcakes. Never a thank you, just you're the responsible one. That was code, not for trust, for expectation. Dana noticed early. Why do you always pay? She asked once when I sent $600 to my mom for just a few things. They're family, I said. So are we, she replied. I wish I'd listened to her back then. Maya got engaged to Brandon, a tech guy who wore cashmere socks and called wine notes of emotion. Their wedding, a rustic luxury vineyard spectacle with drone coverage and a champagne sabering station. I kept quiet at first, then Mom called. We're just a little short, she said, voice all syrup and manipulation. How short? The venue price went up. Can you help just this once? How much? A few thousand. You've always been the generous one. I didn't say yes, but I didn't say no. That was the mistake. Next day, Maya texted, thanks for covering the tasting upgrade. It'll be so worth it. Can't wait. Wait, what? I called her. Who said I was paying for that? She laughed. Don't be stingy. It's your only sister's wedding. And don't pretend you can't afford it. You just bought a Tesla. Yeah. After saving for 5 years and driving a Civic that barely made left turns. You always kill the vibe, she said, then hung up. 3 days later, my aunt told me Maya had finalized the budget, including my $5,000 contribution. The kicker, Dana wasn't even invited. When I confronted my parents, they were vague. You've always helped, Dad said like it was law. Mom added, don't ruin this for Maya, it's her special day. If Dana can't support that, maybe it's better she doesn't come. You're serious. They shrugged. You know how Maya is. Dana was waiting when I got home. Red eyes, a wine glass she hadn't touched. She texted me, she said, Maya. I sat beside her. She said I was a visual liability, that if you really cared about family, you'd come alone. Dana turned to me, voice barely audible. Do I make you look small? Something broke in me. No, I said, they do. Next morning I texted Maya, no drama, just we won't be attending, wishing you the best. I sent the gift. I booked the helicopter. But before I could enjoy it, guilt rolled in. Mom called. Dad texted. Maya posted a passive-aggressive quote on Instagram. Generosity doesn't count if it's petty. Then came the final straw. She messaged me, don't punish me just because your wife doesn't measure up. And that was it. I didn't just book a helicopter, I orchestrated a message, printed, laminated, folded, hundreds of cards. On one side, a black and white portrait of Dana, elegant, real. On the other, screenshots, Maya's texts. If he brings that librarian-looking wife, I'm cropping her out of every photo. Mom's reply, and we'll guilt him into covering half the wedding. He always folds. I didn't fold this time. And when that helicopter hovered above Maya's ceremony, it wasn't just delivering paper. It was dropping years of truth. Publicly. From the top of the hill, the whole wedding looked like a lifestyle magazine ad. Rows of white chairs, soft pink florals, a golden vineyard stretching behind a glass altar. Brandon stood there grinning like a startup mascot. Maya looked radiant, curated. Everything was symmetrical, filtered, even the guests looked like they were selected off a brand mood board. But I knew the cracks underneath. I'd reserved the helicopter to arrive right as their golden hour portraits began. I knew the exact timeline. They'd sent it to every guest in an email that read more like a production schedule than a wedding invite. The cards were bundled, tucked in a sealed compartment. The pilot was ex-military, calm, precise. We hovered at just under FAA notice limits. The wind from the blades scattered petals and made the string quartet pause. Guests looked up, shielding their eyes. Phones came out naturally. Someone laughed nervously, probably thinking it was a surprise finale. Then the hatch opened, and the truth fell. Hundreds of cards spun and fluttered like soft snow. At first, people reached for them like confetti, until they flipped them over. Dana's photo, calm, poised, kind on one side. On the other, Maya's words in sharp print. If he brings that librarian-looking wife, I'm cropping her out of every photo. Mom's heart emoji. And the big one? We'll guilt him into paying half the wedding. He always folds. That one hit like a hammer. People didn't scream. Not at first. They read, blinked, whispered. A few gasped. A woman with a designer fascinator shook her head slowly, mouth open. Then Maya noticed. She spun her train, catching on her heels. She grabbed one of the cards, read it, and dropped it like it burned her. Brandon leaned in. She waved him off, panic rising. Then she saw me. I wasn't hiding, just standing past the gate in a charcoal suit, hands in my pockets, watching. She marched up the aisle like it was a runway veil trailing crooked behind her heels, crunching over cards. "What the hell is this?" she shouted. "What is wrong with you?" I stayed calm. "You wanted a perfect day," I said. "You just forgot the part where you act like a decent person. You ruined everything." "No," I said quietly. "You did, I just made sure people saw it." Behind her, Brandon picked up a card. His face changed. He looked from her to me, back to her. "You said you never talked about him like this," he said. Maya reached for his hand. "It's out of context. They're old texts." He stepped back. "No, they're not. You told me you loved his wife, that she was family." Silence. He looked at me once, nodded, then turned and walked away. Just like that. Maya screamed something. I didn't hear it. The wind drowned her out. Or maybe I just stopped listening. Then Mom came running, red-faced, shaking. "What have you done?" she hissed. "You humiliated your sister?" "She humiliated my wife. For months, and you helped." "You're overreacting," she snapped. "It was just a few texts." I pulled one of the cards from my pocket and held it out. "You liked this. Remember." She paled. All around us, the fantasy was crumbling. Guests were walking off. Some were filming. Others were just quietly slipping their gifts off the table and heading to their cars. Someone muttered, "I guess this wedding's going viral." Someone else said, "Honestly, good for him." I didn't stay to watch the full fallout. I turned and walked back to my car. No rage, no speech, just peace. The silence after was the loudest I'd ever felt. No calls, no texts. Not that day, not the next. Not even from Dad, which somehow made it worse. For a week, it was like I'd never existed. And then, it started. The wedding hashtag vanished. Maya's Instagram wiped clean. No champagne clinks, no drone shots, just a few tagged posts from guests, shaky photos of a bride, mid-meltdown cards littered across lawn chairs, and the caption, "Guess who's not getting brand deals anymore?" I didn't post the video. I didn't need to. Someone else did. It landed on a wedding drama subreddit first. Then TikTok picked it up. Bride bans sister-in-law for not being aesthetic, gets exposed by helicopter. 500,000 likes. 120,000 shares. Comments like, "Imagine calling your SL ugly while begging her husband for money. That was a masterclass in elegant revenge. This man deserves a Nobel Peace Prize and a wine deal." Dana saw it 2 days later. She walked into the room, phone in hand. "This was you." I didn't lie. "Yeah." She didn't speak for a long time. Then she sat beside me trembling and whispered, "Thank you." And then she cried. Not out of sadness, but release. That night we opened our best bottle of wine, ate leftovers on the floor, laughed until 2 a.m. like we were kids again. Just us. No expectations, no guilt. We were free. But freedom, I've learned, has an aftertaste. 4 days later, the calls started again. "Mom first, how dare you?" I didn't shame her, I said. I just stopped protecting her lies. "You need to fix this." I already did. Click. Then Dad. His voice was tired, worn. "You made your point, enough now." "Not quite," I said. "There's more screenshots." A pause. Then coldly, "So that's it. You're just done with us." "I've been done," I said. "You just didn't notice until the money stopped." 2 days later, Maya texted. One line, "You've ruined everything." I forwarded it to Dana with a laughing emoji. She replied, "You ruined her branding." The biggest surprise. Brandon messaged me. On LinkedIn, of all places. He said thanks. I didn't know the half of it. Turns out he moved out 3 days after the wedding. We got coffee. He looked lighter, relieved. "You took the hit so I didn't have to," he said. I just nodded. No smugness, just quiet understanding. The only call I took from family after that was from Grandma. She'd seen the video. "About damn time someone taught that girl a lesson in humility," she cackled. "Did I go too far?" I asked. She paused. "You went high," she said. "They went low. You just flew over it all." I blocked every number except hers. Deleted the family group chat. Stopped waiting for apologies that would never come. And with every day that passed, I felt lighter. Not giddy, not vindictive, just unburdened. Like my back wasn't carrying a weight that never should have been mine. I chose peace, and I meant it. But just when the noise faded, a call came. Private number, Tuesday afternoon. I almost let it ring out, but I picked up. And there she was. Maya. Her voice shaky, small. "I'm pregnant," she said. I didn't speak. "Brandon's gone. Mom and Dad aren't helping. Everyone else disappeared." She took a breath. You're the only one who ever really showed up. And there it was. Not remorse, not growth. Just another request dressed in sentiment. But this time I didn't flinch. I just listened and waited to speak, because when I did, it would be the last time. I let her speak, or try to. She kept pausing, waiting for me to jump in like I always did. Like I had since we were kids, and she'd run to me with scraped knees and made-up tears just to avoid Mom's scolding. Back then, I believed it was my job to protect her. That belief stuck too long. "I don't know what to do," she said again, like it was supposed to land softer this time. "I'm scared." Still, I said nothing. Eventually, she added, "I thought, maybe we could start over." That word "start over" sat heavy in the air. It wasn't a clean slate she was after. It was a clean slate for her. For me, it would have meant wiping away everything she'd done, every word she'd flung like daggers. Every moment Dana cried alone, while I stared at a phone that buzzed with guilt but never apologies. I leaned back in my chair and looked out the window. Our backyard was quiet. The sun was falling low behind the trees, casting long shadows across the grass. Dana was inside, humming quietly in the kitchen. Safe. Ours. Still healing but whole. I turned back to the phone. "Maya," I said steady, "you're about to become a mother. So let me give you something real, something worth more than a check or a favor." She didn't answer. Don't raise your child thinking love is something you owe only when it's convenient. Don't teach them that help is earned by guilt. And for the love of everything, don't use them to trap people in relationships they've outgrown. Silence. Then in a voice I barely recognized, she whispered, "I'm sorry." Was it real? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. But I didn't need to know. "Take care of yourself," I said. And I hung up. No yelling, no moral speech, just an end, a full stop. When I told Dana, she didn't say much at first, just nodded and ran her fingers along the rim of her wine glass. "Do you feel bad?" she asked quietly. I thought about it, really thought. "No," I said, "I feel finished." That night we didn't celebrate. We didn't light a candle or toast with champagne. We just sat, together, in a house that no longer echoed with my family's demands. No background noise of borrowed money or guilt trips. Just her, just us. It's been 3 months now. 3 months since the sky opened over a perfect vineyard wedding and dropped the truth like petals soaked in gasoline. 3 months since I stopped pretending that blood makes people family. And in that time, my phone has been quieter than ever. No more emergency requests, no more passive-aggressive group chats, no more "you're the only one we can count on." It's wild how peace can feel unfamiliar at first, like wearing a new coat. You keep checking the pockets expecting to find the old weight inside, but they're empty. And eventually you stop checking. Dana and I booked a trip. Not the honeymoon we never got. Not some Instagrammable beach resort. Just us. A quiet stretch of coastline where the sand is coarse, the breeze is honest, and the only sounds are waves and the occasional seagull screaming at the wind. We sleep in, we read, we hold hands and talk about everything and nothing. We fight too over stupid things. Dishes, socks, the right way to cut mangoes. But they're real fights, grounded, honest. No one's defending themselves from ghosts in the room. And that's everything. Sometimes I wonder how they're doing, Maya, my parents. I hear pieces through cousins or old neighbors. Maya had to move back in with Mom. Brandon filed for annulment citing fraud and public humiliation. Apparently one of his startup investors saw the wedding clip online and pulled out. Ouch! Mom's busy trying to scrub everything off Facebook. Her most recent post is a blurry quote image about forgiveness being the key to healing. No tags, no comments. Dad's quiet. He always was. But now it feels like guilt has finally dulled his voice too. Do I hate them? No. Hate takes energy. Energy I'd rather spend on things that grow. But I don't forgive them either. Not because I'm cruel, but because forgiveness isn't owed. It's earned. With honesty. With time. With actual change. They haven't earned it, so they don't get it. Maya tried once more. She emailed me. No subject line, just a few paragraphs. She talked about therapy, about growth, about how becoming a mother changed her, about wishing Dana could be in her child's life. "I want her to see strong women," Maya wrote, "and I think Dana is one of the strongest." That line stung more than anything, because if she'd said it 2 years ago, hell, even 6 months ago, it would have meant something. Now it just felt like another marketing pitch. I didn't respond. I forwarded the email to Dana. Her reply, "Nice words. Where was this energy when she called me furniture?" I smiled, deleted the message. No drama, no bitterness, just boundaries. Here's the thing. No one tells you about walking away from family. It's not a clean break, it's more like peeling off a sticker that's been stuck too long. It doesn't come off in one go, leaves pieces behind. You'll find bits of it months later, old habits, gut reactions, guilt you didn't know was still living in your chest. But over time, the pieces stop sticking. You become whole again, or maybe for the first time. There's a photo of Dana on our bookshelf now, the same one I used for the cards. It used to hurt looking at it knowing how much they disrespected her. Now it's a reminder of who I chose, of who chose me back. Not for money, not for obligation, just love. Simple, steady, real. People ask sometimes, especially online, since that video still makes the rounds on drama subs. Do you regret it? No. Would I do it again? Honestly, probably not. Not because it wasn't satisfying, it was. Deeply. But because I shouldn't have had to. No one should have to expose their family just to be treated like a person. But we do what we must to break the cycle. Sometimes that means speaking up. Sometimes it means going silent. Sometimes it means dropping truth from the sky. This isn't a revenge story. Not really. It's a reclamation story. A voice, of dignity, of self. I didn't destroy the family. I just stopped financing their fantasy. They said I overreacted, that I embarrassed them, that I was petty. Fine. But I wasn't wrong. If you're still reading this wondering if it's okay to step away from people who hurt you, just because they share your DNA, let me say it clearly. Yes, it's okay. It's not selfish, it's not cruel, it's survival. It's strength. And no, you won't crumble. You'll fly. Maybe over a vineyard. Maybe over your own past. But you'll rise. Higher than the guilt. Higher than the shame. Higher than the story they wrote for you. And one day you'll look down not with anger, not with pride, but with peace. That's what I found. Not revenge. Peace. And it was worth every falling card. Story 3. My name's Julian. I'm 32, and until last month I still believed there was something in my family worth saving. Not anymore. We were in Costa del Sol, Spain. A beautiful beachfront resort, all golden skies and overpriced cocktails. It was supposed to be a reunion, my mom's idea. She sold it as a reconnection retreat after a year of fractured group texts and guilt-laced silence. She said, "Let us treat you for once." Spoiler, I treated them, just like always. The trip started with matching shirts that read, "The Coleman Clan Conquers 2025. I laughed politely. I smiled through the photos. My sister Jenna brought her fiancé Marcus, who scanned the buffet like it was beneath him. My brother Cole showed up late, left early, and blamed stock alerts. Mom played peacekeeper. Dad? He drank. By day 3, I was done pretending. That morning, we were seated on the sun-drenched terrace, everyone acting like this was some happy sitcom reunion. Fake chuckles over stories that had never been funny. I was nursing an espresso I didn't want when my dad's sunglasses pushed up like a discount Bond villain, took a slow sip of his mojito and said, "You don't deserve this vacation, Julian. You've always been kind of a drag." The table chuckled. And then he added deadpan, "But hey, thanks for footing the bill. Your card's making this dream week possible." Everyone laughed again, even Jenna, even Mom. My stomach flipped, not from embarrassment, but from clarity. Cold, sharp clarity. I said, "Then stop using my card." And I stood. Napkin down, no drama, no tantrum, just done. No one said a word. Marcus froze mid-chew. Cole raised an eyebrow. Mom reached for her mimosa and missed. I didn't look back. I walked past the pool, past the bar, straight to the elevator, hands shaking. And that was the moment I stopped calling it a family vacation. Later that afternoon, I opened my banking app. Charges I hadn't made. $2,764.92 at the resort boutique. $1,180 on a couple's massage. I'm single. $380 in minibar and room service on nights I wasn't even at the hotel. All tagged to my room, all on my card, all deliberate. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was coordinated exploitation. They knew my card was on file. They knew I wouldn't say anything because I never did. This had been building for years. My dad forgetting his wallet, the lake house I co-signed for but never got a key to. Mom sobbing on the phone saying, "Julian, your brother needs help. He's drowning." I paid off Cole's DUI fine. I covered Jenna's deposit when Marcus lost his job. I was the family's invisible bank account, the one who always picked up the slack, the one who was so lucky to have money and therefore responsible for everyone else's poor choices. That night I requested a full itemized bill from the hotel. The concierge hesitated until I said I was the card holder. Then she printed everything, no questions. I sat on the patio alone, flipping page by page through a catalog of my family's freeloading. And the most shocking part, not a single thank you. You've always had more than the others, Mom said when I confronted her. Translation, your success means you're obligated to carry everyone else. I was 10 when I realized my family didn't really see me. Not as a person, just as the stable one, the background character. Back then, I built a science fair volcano from scratch, painted the lava with nail polish, and stayed up gluing papier-mâché while everyone else watched TV. My mom stepped over it for days, didn't ask once what it was. But when Jenna cried about her glitter tiara for a school play, everything stopped. Mom literally stepped on my volcano to hug her. Didn't notice. Didn't apologize. That was my role from then on. Quiet, reliable, forgettable. While Jenna and Cole got excuses, grace and gifts I got, you'll be fine. By 14, I was mowing lawns. By 17, flipping phones on eBay. I skipped parties, saved money, built something from nothing. My parents rewarded that with nothing. When Jenna turned 18, they bought her a brand new Toyota. She's a girl, Mom said. It's not safe for her to take the bus. I got a hug and a $50 Walmart gift card for college. And a post-it from Dad, make us proud. But not too proud. They never visited me at college. But when Cole dropped out after 2 semesters, I got the call. Can you loan him a bit? He's your brother. I wired $4,000. He used it to invest in a pyramid scheme and take a trip to Bali. But the real betrayal, the one that cracked me, happened 4 Christmases ago. I saved for months to surprise my parents with an Alaskan cruise, printed the tickets, wrapped them, wrote a card that said, "Let me take care of you for once." Dad opened the box, barely glanced at it, and passed it to Jenna. Her eyes lit up. Perfect. Marcus and I needed a break. They gave my gift away. Like I was just a travel agent. The Marbella trip I never agreed to pay. I agreed to go. At check-in, the receptionist asked for a card. Everyone turned to me. Dad shrugged. Jenna said, "It's just a hold. You'll get it back." Lie. Within 48 hours, she had designer bags. Cole had champagne delivered to his room. I had the receipts, literally. The kicker. When I asked why, Dad laughed and said, "Come on, Julian, you'll earn it back in a week." It wasn't about the money. It was about never being asked, never being respected, always being expected. So I emailed them all. Subject line: family expenses. Reimbursement breakdown. Body attached is a detailed breakdown of charges made to my credit card during the trip. Please review and confirm which charges you will be reimbursing by Friday. If I don't hear back, I'll be pursuing legal options, including fraud claims. I'd prefer to resolve this amicably. Julian. No hearts, no smiley faces, just data. 3 hours later, a group Zoom request. Mom wanted to talk this out. Fine. I sent a link. She showed up with wine. Jenna was curling her hair. Cole was shirtless in bed. Dad was off camera. Why would you threaten legal action? Mom asked, sounding hurt. Because this isn't about a misunderstanding, I said. It's about theft. Cole laughed. You're being dramatic. So I shared my screen, showed the charges. Jenna, $3,000 plus. Cole, $2,600 plus. Mom and Dad, $4,000 combined. Miscellaneous, $1,500 with no names. And I asked, would you be okay with this if the roles were reversed? Jenna snapped, you make more than any of us, and that justifies robbing me. No one answered. Mom started crying. We just wanted a nice trip, just one where no one had to stress. You've been so distant, Jules. We thought this would help. I stared at her. You think this helped? Silence. Dad finally unmuted and said, what do you want? Money. No, I said. I want boundaries. And consequences. I didn't yell. Didn't demand an apology. Didn't slam the laptop shut when the call ended in silence. I just stood up, walked over to the tiny minibar in my suite, ironic really, and poured myself a glass of water. Not whiskey, not wine, just water. I needed clarity, not comfort. That night I filed a fraud report. I had every receipt, every timestamp. The boutique purchases Jenna made were signed under her room number. Cole's minibar charges came from his suite. My name, my card, just the vessel. It was surreal, like realizing halfway through a dream that none of it was accidental. They knew what they were doing. The fallout started within hours. Jenna texted, are you seriously reporting your own family? That's cold. Cole messaged, bro, relax, it was a vacation, you're acting like we stole your car. Mom left a voicemail that started with sniffles and ended with Julian honey. You're hurting everyone. You've always been the steady one. Why now? And then came Dad. 2 days later. He didn't even use words at first, just sent a PayPal request. I kid you not. One on to test if you're still being petty. I didn't respond, just blocked him. I could feel the old script trying to play itself out. It was always the same. Step 1. Gaslight me into guilt. Step 2. Frame it as you're the problem. Step 3. Let time smooth it over until I forgot again. Step 4. Repeat. Only this time I wasn't playing. I deleted the family group chat, removed them from my emergency contacts, revoked shared Apple ID privileges, and unsubscribed from every shared Netflix, Spotify, or "oh, we forgot the password again" account. Digital detox, but make it personal. By Friday, no one responded to my reimbursement request, so I escalated. My bank froze the charges. The hotel launched an internal review. A fraud alert hit Jenna's boutique account. She messaged again, this time in full panic mode. "This is going to mess with my credit, Julian. Fix it, now." I replied with one lie. Actions have consequences. Welcome to adulthood. Cole sent a voice memo full of expletives and then blocked me preemptively. Classy. Dad went quiet. But Mom, she doubled down. Called twice a day. Left voicemails about family forgiveness, how none of us are perfect, and you've always been different, Julian. We didn't mean to hurt you. And for once, I didn't eat those words like candy. I let them rot. Here's what no one in my family understood. I wasn't cutting them off over money. I was cutting them off because of what the money represented. It wasn't about the $11,000 in charges. It was about how easy it was for them to make me invisible. Again. To watch me pick up tabs and take none of the weight. To laugh at my discomfort while sipping overpriced cocktails I never agreed to buy. To act like being the responsible one meant I had no feelings, no limits, no humanity. So I took it further. I drafted a formal legal notice. Sent it through a lawyer I knew from work. Nothing aggressive, just clean language outlining the unauthorized use of my financial account, the steps I'd already taken, and the potential consequences if reimbursement didn't happen. Each envelope was personalized. Each one required a signature upon delivery. Dad refused to sign his. Cole posted a screenshot on Instagram with the caption, "When your brother forgets who fed him ramen in 2012. Oh right, that one time he bought me noodles in college after I drove 4 hours to bail him out of jail. How could I forget?" Then came the email. Subject: "You've changed." From Mom. She wrote about Christmas mornings, about my first tooth, about how Jenna and Cole always looked up to me, how I was being cruel, not just distant. At the end, she asked, "Do you really want to be alone, Julian?" And for the first time in my life, I realized something. I wasn't alone, I was just free. There's a difference. A week later, I did something petty, but it felt good. I took every receipt from the trip, compiled them into a PDF, and posted them in our extended family's WhatsApp group. No commentary, just facts. Caption: "This is what just a vacation looked like." My cousin Elsie replied with a string of shocked emojis. My aunt, who always pretended to be neutral, sent a private message. I had no idea, that's disgusting. Jenna left the group. Cole changed his profile picture. Dad called my cousin behind my back and said I was mentally unwell. Classic. But that moment, that small act of exposure, cracked something open. For years, I thought speaking up made me the bad guy, that holding a line was selfish, that no was a dirty word. Turns out no is a boundary, and boundaries aren't walls, they're doors, locked ones. That same week, I got a promotion. Out of nowhere. My manager pulled me aside and said, "You've been overdue, and more importantly, you've been solid, dependable." Funny how the word dependable can feel different depending on who says it. When my family said it, it meant I owed them everything. When my boss said it, it meant I'd earned something. I took the raise, booked a solo trip to Switzerland, 5-star stay, glacier views, no shared credit cards. I posted one photo, caption: "Paid for, by me, for me." No tags, no family drama, just freedom. And still they reached out. Jenna messaged me a week later. "Marcus lost his job. We're struggling with the rent. Could you?" I didn't respond. Instead, I sent her a PDF of her charges from the trip. Highlighted in yellow, $1 180s, couples massage, Marcus included. Then I blocked her. By the time Christmas rolled around, the silence was deafening. No invites, no calls, no guilt texts. For the first time in over a decade, I didn't wake up with a pit in my stomach on Christmas morning. I made coffee, read a book, listened to music, no fake gratitude, no tension behind hugs. Just peace. Then Mom sent a letter. Handwritten, blue ink, stationery with birds on the edge. You know the kind. "Julian, I know things have been difficult. I'm sorry we took you for granted, but it's the holidays. Can't we move on from all this? We love you. Mom." I flipped the card over, wrote 4 words, "Love doesn't swipe Amex." Mailed it back. I wasn't trying to destroy my family. I was just tired of being destroyed by them. Tired of the guilt, the manipulation, the emotional IOUs that never expired, and tired of being the only adult in a room full of grown kids. That's the thing about freedom. It's quiet, it's clean, and once you taste it, you'll never go back to begging for scraps at a table you paid for. I didn't set out for revenge. I set out for peace. And in getting it, maybe just maybe I found myself silence. No texts, no missed calls. Not even a sarcastic meme from Cole or a guilt-trip voicemail from Mom. Just nothing. At first, I didn't know what to do with the quiet. I kept waiting for the next move like a punch that never came. But eventually, silence stopped feeling like the absence of something and started feeling like space. Space to breathe, space to think, space to live. Then one morning, I got a text from my dad. "Cole's about to lose his apartment. Can you at least co-sign the lease?" I laughed. Out loud. Right there in the middle of my kitchen, still in pajamas, holding my coffee. That was the moment I knew they still didn't get it. They thought this was just a phase, a tantrum, some dramatic flare-up I'd walk back from once I cooled down. But I hadn't cooled down. I had cleared out. That same week, I bought a townhouse. Nothing flashy, clean lines, quiet street, hardwood floors that didn't creak like my childhood home did. No co-signers, no shared accounts, no one else's fingerprints on the paperwork but mine. The key felt heavier than I expected when the realtor handed it to me, not physically, just symbolically. I didn't just unlock a door. I locked out a legacy. With no one draining my account every month, money started stacking instead of slipping. I paid off my car, built a real investment portfolio, took weekends off, cooked meals that didn't involve microwaves or shame. I slept through the night for the first time in years. You don't realize how heavy a backpack is until you set it down. And my family, they were the whole damn backpack. But karma doesn't need a calendar. It just waits. Jenna got laid off when the boutique she worked at went under. Apparently, designer bags don't pay the rent. She moved back in with our parents. Cole's car got repossessed. Word is he started driving Uber from Dad's driveway again. Mom emailed me subject line, "Your sister needs help. Body. Jenna is struggling. Can you just help until she gets back on her feet?" I replied with one sentence, "You raised her, you help her." Then I archived the thread. A month later, a letter arrived in the mail. Handwritten, flowery envelope. You could smell the perfume before you even opened it. It was from Mom. "Julian, I know you think we failed you. Maybe we did. Ava is hurting. Cole is lost. Your father hardly speaks anymore. We were just trying to have one trip where we felt like a family again. That doesn't mean we don't love you. Please call me. Love, Mom." I read it once, then flipped the page over and wrote, "Love doesn't come with an invoice." I mailed it back the next day. In January, I got promoted again. VP pulled me aside, handed me an envelope and said, "This isn't just about your results. It's about how solid you are, how much people trust you." Funny, isn't it? My family called me cold. But here my clarity was a gift. I didn't post about the promotion, didn't flex the raise or the performance bonus or the fact that I was now overseeing 2 divisions. No hashtags, no humble brags, just calm. The best revenge is silence. They kept trying to pull me back in. Cole sent me a half-hearted apology over text filled with typos and bros. "Yo man, stuff got wild. Didn't mean for it to get like that. Blocked." Jenna messaged me on Venmo of all places. "Need $200 for books. Promise I'll pay back." I replied with a screenshot of her boutique charges. $3,011.64. Caption already covered. No refunds. Then I hit decline. One night I drove past the house I grew up in. The porch light was off, grass overgrown, paint peeling around the garage door. Cole's old truck sat in the driveway, one tire flat. No laughter inside, no light in the windows. I didn't stop, didn't honk, didn't slow down. I just looked at it and thought, "You built this mess. Now you get to live in it." Then came the message that almost broke me. It wasn't from Mom or Dad or my siblings. It was from my cousin Talia, the only one who hadn't taken sides. "Hey Jules, just wanted to say, I think you were right. I used to think you were harsh, but now I see you were just the only one telling the truth. You made me rethink a lot. Thank you." I sat with that message for a long time. No music, no distractions, just me, the screen, and the sound of my own breath. And for the first time in a long time I cried. But they weren't bitter tears. They were quiet, clean, healing, because for once someone saw me. Not as the bank, Not as the fixer, not as the fallback guy. Just me. After that, I started writing again. Not stories for work, not reports or summaries or budgets. Just stories, real ones, about boundaries, about betrayal, about love that comes with strings and how cutting those strings doesn't mean cutting your heart out. I published one on a blog, titled it, When Family Means Debt. It went viral. Emails poured in, messages from strangers saying, "This is my life. You helped me walk away. You gave me the words I didn't know I needed." And that felt like something real. Months passed. Then spring came. I took a trip to Ireland, just me, a backpack and the coast. I walked the cliffs of Moher, watched the sea crash below, ate fish and chips with a view of the world and not a single voice in my head telling me I owed anyone anything. Peace doesn't announce itself. It just sits next to you one day and says, "Hey, I'm here now." Then the final letter came. No return address. But I recognized the handwriting immediately. It was Dad. "Julian, we've all made mistakes, but shutting us out like this, it's tearing us apart. Cole's struggling, Jen is trying. Your mother cries every week. You were always the smart one. Maybe that made us forget you were also human. We're not asking for money, just a seat at the table again. Please come home. Dad." I read it. Twice. Then I walked to the fireplace, lit a match, watched the paper curl and blacken and disappear. Because here's the truth. I am home, and it's peaceful here. They never heard from me again.